Hello, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join me. My name is Ray Reyes. I'm with Latitudes Training, Coaching, and Consulting. And this is part two of a four-part series on exit strategies for language service providers. So let's just jump right in. In part one, we reviewed why it's so important to have an exit strategy for your language business. We reviewed the three main factors that influence the timing of your exit: the seller, you; the market, our industry and the financial sectors; and the buyer. And today in part two, we're going to review the different type of exit strategies that you may want to consider for your language business. And they are mergers and acquisitions, alliances, passage of control to heirs, and IPO. Although IPO is a rare bird these days, it certainly is an option. The most important thing is choosing your exit strategy before you want to sell the business. As I spoke in part one, it's important that you have your exit strategy as part of your business plan from the very beginning. Now you have a goal that you know you're working towards. Your exit strategy impacts many directions that you might choose and how you grow your business. Not considering your exit strategy early will limit your options in the future. It's not a matter of whether you will sell or otherwise leave your interest in the business. Your only decisions are when and how. Most business founders want their companies to stay in their family, but in some cases, maintaining family control just isn't practical. Sometimes you don't have a family member who you can leave it to. Maybe there's no one in your family who has an interest in your business. Or maybe you have someone who's interested in your business, but they don't have the skill set and the experience to successfully run the company. Under these circumstances, you need to look outside the family for leadership if you want your company to survive. Right? Whatever the case, as an owner, you must confront the inevitable and plan for the future of your company. Having a solid management succession plan in place well before retirement is absolutely critical for an ongoing successful business. You need to examine your options and decide when it's time to step down from your business. Selling a business when you are finished with it too often leads to lower valuations and less leverage. Achieving maximum value for a business requires you to commit to be mentally and emotionally prepared. You need to be deal ready. You need to start monitoring the buyer markets, and you need to be able to act decisively at the right time. So what's the toughest part about selling a business? I can tell you from experience, it's the emotional part of accepting the fact that the company that you built and grew to where it is going to be gone and run by somebody else. That for me was hard for me to accept. And for a lot of owners, making the decision to sell, is hard in itself. Especially when you look at all the time and energy spent building your company. It's a huge emotional process that's full of choices, decisions, and actions. But when you finally make the decision that you really want to move on with your life, you soon realize, right, that the largest asset you own, or one of the largest assets you own, is your business. And by selling your business will add to your financial independence, or at least add to your financial situation. Typically, LSPs go through three cycles, right? You have the startup stage of the business, right? This is the exciting time, right? Most founders are full of energy and optimism. But it's also a time of survival, right? And you get past you got the mission statement on the wall. You have this vision of grandeur in your eyes. You share with everybody everybody you come in contact with. But now it goes from excitement to survival. Just making payroll can be challenging in those beginning stages. Then you move to what I'm going to call the growth cycle. You've passed the startup stage, and hopefully your company is executing on a growth strategy. And this is the most challenging period for many LSPs and where many owners become complacent. After reaching a comfortable state, the early goals of growing the business to greatness, give way to doing what comes easy, and the business is ultimately run to be your lifestyle business. And I mean this in a way that where owners pay themselves enough to have a comfortable lifestyle, they take less risk, their day to day becomes much less complicated, they do the same things every day, they fall into this routine or rut more than a routine. And these LSPs usually are never reach their full potential and very rarely even cross over the $2 million revenue mark. And they never become profitable enough to be sold for what they think they're worth because they become in this routine. They haven't looked at new technologies. They haven't developed a growth strategy. They haven't developed a high performance sales team to win new business. They're kind of living off their laurels, right? You have your customers and you think you're growing by word of mouth. I've heard that so many times, but you're not growing your business. And this is where it's really challenging to tell an owner that their company's not worth what they think it's worth because you really haven't grown your business. They get into this routine and 5 years turns into 25 years and you look at the growth rate. For all intents and purposes, it's flat. And it's very challenging to talk with owners when you tell them their valuation is worth X and they thought it was X times 10. So it's very challenging. Then we have those LSPs, right, that have grown their business, that they become very attractive for acquisition, either by other LSPs or private equity groups that want to invest in them. And these LSPs continue to execute and update their strategy. They created and developed high-performance sales teams with a strong sales methodology, and they themselves are even looked to acquire smaller companies. This sustained growth cycle can be from anywhere from 10 to 20 years or even longer. But even with this type of success, I've seen owners and CEOs go into what I call wind down mode. This is where they find themselves getting tired of running the company day after day. It's taken, blood, sweat, and tears. They've been very successful, but now they're really drained and they're ready for a change and they're ready to go and move on and do something different. Unfortunately, that's when most of the owners and CEOs start thinking about a succession plan. And although they were successful in building their company, they don't have a clear and concise exit strategy for themselves. Selling your business is one of the most emotional decisions you're ever going to make. But if you remain emotional and undecided, you'll never get the deal done. You must be 100% sure you are going to sell before you start the process. Because if you start the process and then pull back, you run the risk of creating doubt, fear, confusion with your employees, your vendors, your partners, even your clients. Here's an interesting statistic. Believe it or not, the average age of an owner who successfully sells their business is 45. Once a business owner gets into their late 50s, 60s, or 70s, they talk about selling, but many times won't be able to pull the trigger. And the longer they put it off, the harder it is to do. Some LSP owners who start the selling process in the later stages of their life end up walking away from deals because of fear of not knowing what they're going to do with themselves after the sale. Going to work every morning has become a lifestyle routine for them. Their business, their employees, even their peers in the industry have become more like family than colleagues. But let's look at the owners who actually have made the decision to sell. And then let's talk about the two ways to sell. Sell to outsiders or sell to non-family insiders. Let's take a look at those. Selling your language business to an outsider is no simple task. And when it's done properly, it takes time, patience, and preparation to locate a suitable buyer, then strike the deal, and then make the transition. Advanced preparation, maintaining accurate financial records, and timing are the keys to a successful sale. Too often I've seen business owners, like a lot of famous athletes, stay in the game too long. They stay with their business well past their interest level, or we'll say their prime, and really being energetic, strategic in their decision making, and aggressive in their growth strategy, and they become very happy with the status quo. They postpone selling it and they're coming to the last minute till they reach retirement age and they face a business crisis of how do I sell my company and retire. These kind of decisions turn into fire sales, and this is a desperate approach. And when you reach a desperate approach, the value for your company falls drastically. Now let's look at how you sell your company, right? Not just to who or what methodology you follow, but there's a way you're going to sell it. Straight sale, financing, ESOP, LBOs. There's a lot of things to look at. A straight sale may be the best for those owners who just want to get out of it. They just want to sell their company, hand over the keys to somebody else, move on with their life. Just, I'm done. Here's the keys. Write me a check. However, selling a business outright is not an attractive exit for those who want to stay on with their company for some time, who want to move out of their company gradually. Straight sale is once the check is written and the documents are signed, you are no longer welcome in the building. So with Elvis, you need to leave. And there's a lot of ways to do that, right? You need to understand how you do that. You can write a check, and writing a check may sound great, but I can assure you that is a very rare model today. It limits the number of potential buyers. It also limits the timing, right? So you may want to sell it and walk away, but now your buying pool is much smaller. So I guess do you want to clean cash 100% at closing, or are you open to financing a portion of selling your business? If you are open-minded and can be creative, you open up your seller pool, your buyer pool to a broader range of folks, right? And especially in this economy when we have some really low interest rates and you have a lot of cheap money out there, people can do some loans based on their equity in their business, and they can come out and they can start looking for other companies to acquire. But if you're open to financing options, it definitely will create a larger buyer pool for you. Let's talk about selling to insiders who are non-family members. When you don't have a family member to who you can transfer ownership of your company, selling the business to your management team or employees is another option. In these situations, the owners who want to sell to their employees have a couple of options to do that. Straight sale we talked about before, sell for cash plus a balance in a note, an LBO, leveraged buyout, or an employee stock ownership plan. Whether you sell your business to insiders, outsiders, a family member, private equity company, you need to look at the option of financing a portion of the sale price. This is where the buyer pays you a lump sum up front, and you hold a promissory note for the remaining balance. Because of the creative options here, this method of selling is extremely popular for new buyers. And sellers need to really think hard and long about being creative. It also allows them to stay on with the company as well. We can touch on that a little bit later. Also, by doing it this way, when you carry a note, buyers can buy more, pay more as well for a company, because they don't have to come up with all the money at one time. And as a seller, you also can appreciate the reduced tax implications. Right now, you have lower capital gains taxes that you have to pay. So now you receive a portion up front. You have a steady stream of income in the future. Oftentimes you can maintain a board seat, right, or in some way stay connected to the business, and so that it's your company is being run right, and also that your investment in being paid off over time is strong. LBOs are really a thing in the past, but we'll talk about them real quick. And this is basically where your management team or your employees go to a bank, borrow the money, right? They they go ahead and pay. It's in a debt, right? They're in a debt situation where they have a loan over a period of time, a lot like a mortgage, but at a much higher interest rate. And this makes the company become highly leveraged. That's what I call a leveraged buyout. Highly leveraged debt. But to one part of it, it can be an attractive for both the buyer and the seller. The seller, you get your money up front, and you walk away. And it's for the buyers, the managers, and employees that is who buy the company. Now they have a strong incentive to make sure that they execute effectively. They grow the business. They operate more efficiently so they can pay off this high interest note. You can look at it as a positive. I'm not sure how I feel about LBOs in today's world, but they are definitely an option. Then you have the employee stock ownership plan, ESOPs, right? Business is purchased gradually, right? And this allows the management team and employees to write a check from their own personal savings. They have a note that's held by their old owner or current owner, and they pay over time. They do that out of a portion of their salaries and their wages, but they also do that out of profit sharing, right? So now they pay the new owner over time, and this is a very interesting model. I hadn't seen this very often until recently. I have someone that I know very intimately and have worked with. That they recently went through an ESOP, a very successful ESOP. And it was successful because of the model. They had a very well-run company. It was very efficiently run. Strong management team. They had a strong operations team. And these guys had been with the company for a minimum of 10 years. Most of the senior people in this deal had been there over 15 years. And the senior manager who now runs the company had been there almost 30 years since the inception of the company. This was a very successful ESOP. This allowed them to write a check to their owner, who was already financially secure because he was a good money manager, write a check to the owner, and then have a note that was negotiated that they pay over time. And this worked out very well. It also allows the seller to push out some of his capital gains liabilities as well. And in this slide, I'm going to reiterate something I mentioned in the previous slide is that the owner, how well prepared they were. They were very prepared, both personally, financially, and the company was also ready. I mean, it operated extremely efficiently with very strong margins, long-term clients, the very low turnover, almost zero turnover in their management team and employees. There was more. The commitment level and dedication level of this company is higher than anyone I've ever seen in our industry. And so it was a very good environment for this ESOP to take place. It was a trusted, everybody was smiling a lot like the slide here. If you look at these guys smiling and happy, and that's the environment of this transaction. It was a very happy moment for everybody. The new owner was ready to move on. Traveling was in their future. They wanted to do something else, spend some time with loved ones. So the transition worked out perfectly for them. And I think that being prepared, having a long-term goal and strategy in place really helped them effectively with this transition. I guess the real question is selling your way to get out of the business? Selling your language business to somebody has its challenges. And it's a very, very important decision. And it's a decision that's hard to make. One day you own your company, the next day you don't. You need to look at how you sell and how you get out, and you make sure that you optimize the terms of the sale. The new owner may insist you continue to operate the business or work for the business for an agreed upon period of time. We also know this model very, very closely, in that we have experienced that ourselves, where we have sold an LSP and we were asked to stay on in a management capacity to continue to run the business, or work in the business, I should say, for a period of 1 year. This was a transition period, and this is very beneficial to both parties. You can get more by staying on longer, but also this buyer gets the satisfaction of knowing the transition on the client side, right? You're not just sending out an email or making phone calls. Now you can actually meet with your larger clients, transfer the ownership, understand understand that the new client, excuse me, understand that the client knows that the buyer and the seller understand the transition, and make sure it's as seamless as possible for your client, right? Because the less they're impacted, the more value it is to the buyer. And as we take a look at the advantages of selling and the disadvantages of selling your company, right? You got personal liquidity. You deposit check into your personal account, allows you to diversify your investments. You have your assets are spread across amongst different vehicles, but also has an opportunity for you to liquidate all your business assets and walk away. The disadvantages of selling your company is that you have to give up the company you started, your baby. You lose control in your business, and the opportunity to grow your business further completely stops. It is what it is, and you no longer have an impact on how to grow your company. And lastly, let's talk about IPOs. We're going to talk about very briefly. We have a few public companies in our industry, not very many in comparison to the rest of the world. IPO, going public, is a huge undertaking. It's when a company sells interests, all of its shares, to the public in an initial public offering through an investment bank, where the bank takes your stock shares and creates an interest amongst its clients in buying your stock. They charge 10 to 15% to do that. And if you are able to go through an IPO, typically the owners and those that have equity in the company make a lot of money. Tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars can be made through IPOs. Although this is a very rare way to exit a company in our industry, it has happened. But the most common transfer of ownership in our industry has been passing it on to your heirs, right? From one family member to another. But this just requires a lot of patience and a lot of endurance. And it's best that you start grooming your replacement early on to make sure they understand the business. They understand business. You need to make sure that you have all your strategy and all your what I would call confidential information is all transferred. What I call the IQ part of the business transferred over to the new management team and the new senior manager. And do that and make sure they're also ready to run the company and understand the business by attending training programs, industry events, and make sure that they understand not only our business but understand the business of growing the business. And whether you decide to have an ESOP, sell it to a management team, go through an LBO, be acquired, you need to understand that this is a very complex process, and you need to understand what your company is really worth, not what you think it's worth, but what your company is really worth, because oftentimes those two don't align. What someone thinks their company is worth and what it's worth is very rare. But you need to do this with a trusted partner. I recommend that you would put together a small advisory team of an accounting professional, a legal professional, and an industry professional. Someone who can help you understand the valuation of your business, who's gone through this before, who understands the pitfalls that are out there to make sure you stay away from, and has your best interest at heart as well. You need to make sure you have a trusted partner. Doesn't matter how big or small your company is. When you go through an exit strategy of selling your company, you need to make sure that you have someone you trust to help you with this, and do not try to do this by yourself. As we look at the M&A world and how it's impacted us in the language services industry, we've seen a lot of M&A activity in our industry in the last 6 months. I touched on this in part 1 of the series, where we've had a lot of European LSPs coming over to the United States, acquiring smaller companies or specialized companies in a specific industry to increase their presence, right? They want to increase their global footprint, but also to help them with their currency exchange challenges they have from converting from dollars into pounds or euros. That's been a very been very challenging for a lot of European companies dealing with U.S. companies here on the client side. and there's a couple ways the M&A world works, right? You have a merger, two companies come together, and one company survives. You have a consolidation. That's when two companies come together and they form a new company. And then you have a takeover, complete acquisition. And typically that happens more with bigger companies where people just come in and buy their stock. In a private world, having someone in just come in and take over doesn't really happen. And there's also a rare exit strategy, and is moving into and partnering with alliances. That's where you have like a technology partner, forming a new company or merging with a translation company. Typically, these things don't work out too well, right? You have a huge failure rate, and the failure rate is due to contrasting corporate cultures. Management teams don't get along, or there's some personality conflicts. But also difference in strategic priorities. How to sell and who you sell technologies to is very different than who you sell translation language services to. So alliances themselves are very challenging. And as we wrap up here, one of the things I stressed in a few slides back, whether you're going through an M&A, whether you have a straight sell, whether you're leaving the company to someone in your family or you're selling it to your existing management team, the key is to make sure you surround yourself with trusted advisors, from tax professionals, legal professionals, and industry strategy professionals who can help you navigate through the chaotic process of selling your business. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up our day, say thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. If you have any questions, please email me. My email address is rreyes, that's rreyes, at latitudescoach.com. I look for all your comments and questions, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great day.